Good afternoon, welcome to the UK Column News. It's just gone 1 o'clock and myself, Louise Collins, Brian Garish and Mike Robinson are here in Plymouth, and we have the one and only Patrick Henningsen waiting in London to talk to us and join us today. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, and the sun is still shining, which is getting very disconcerting indeed, so a lot of smiling people here in Plymouth.
It's a bit cold though.
Bit cold and chilly. Patrick, have we got you at the moment?
Yes, indeed, Brian. How are you?
We're very well. My goodness, that's a very smart shirt. I just got a glimpse of that. We'll promote that to the viewers in due course.
Is it promoting Labour or something else? I wonder.
We'll see. Well, we were going to start off. Today with just an article from The Guardian, which has sort of slipped through the net because. It's a very detailed analysis of the role that Saudi Arabia has been playing in supporting units linked to Al-Qaeda. And the journalist here is pointing out, so this is Patrick Coburn, he's examining the role of Saudi Arabia as the jihadists' greatest ally and asks whether the kingdom will be forced to change tack in the face of American impatience and the rising anarchy in Syria. So I'm just going to encourage that people might like to, did I say The Guardian? I meant The Independent. Yeah. Encourage people to go to that Independent article. It's very, very detailed. And of course, it's starting to take the lid off everything that we've been told in the wider context, that these extremist units have suddenly popped up out of nowhere. And of course, as the situation in Syria deteriorates, it's becoming even more important to work out how this country was actually broken up and who was responsible for the tens and tens of thousands of deaths in Syria and hundreds of deaths which are still occurring on a daily basis. So that was really just to draw your attention to that particular article. But for people to remember that although we're beginning to focus across on the very dangerous situation in Ukraine, there's still unbelievable human suffering going on in Syria as a result of the intervention, of course, by the UK, the US, and as we're seeing from this gentleman's article and others, from Saudi Arabia. So that probably brings us on to the Ukraine. If you'd like to lead in, Mike.
So yesterday we spoke about the intention to impose sanctions on Russia as a result of the Crimean referendum, and I mentioned that unless there's a turnout of less than 50%, it could never be considered legitimate by Western standards. So indeed, that's been confirmed in the mainstream press with a number of news outlets using the phrase Soviet style, implying that the 80% plus turnout resulted from some kind of pressure applied to force people out to vote. The rhetoric in the mainstream press is really pretty amusing at the moment. But we also suggested that Europe has more to lose than Russia in the event of sanctions which would involve trade. And as it turns out, of course, the sanctions that have been imposed by the US and the EU don't involve trade, but instead consist of travel bans and asset seizures on a number of individuals, including some Russians close to Putin himself. And Putin's reaction, as you would imagine, is, this really, who cares? And after all, it's pretty hard to seize assets if there are no assets to seize. So quite a number of these people don't actually have any assets in the West. And so he doesn't really care too much. But what he's therefore saying is, and instead of reacting to the sanctions, Putin has gone ahead and issued a decree okaying a draft treaty between the newly independent Crimea and Russia. And this afternoon, in fact, I think just about an hour ago, he addressed a special joint session of the Russian Parliament. And he said, in people's heart of hearts, Crimea has always been part of Russia. He also said the people of Crimea clearly and convincingly expressed their will and they want to be with Russia. So he said, we will, of course, be facing foreign confrontation. So this is no longer interference that's being used. It's now confrontation in response to the Crimea move. Quote, but we have to decide for ourselves, are we to protect our national interest or just carry on giving them away forever? So I'm really going to ask at this point, can we have Putin for Prime Minister? Because to be honest, all that the traitors in this country ever do is give away our national interest. They don't protect it at all. And he seems pretty determined to protect his. Should also mention that Ukraine's foreign minister has already rejected a Russian proposal to create a contact group to mediate in the crisis and to suggest changes to Ukraine's constitution. So, with that short introduction, maybe we could ask Pat to comment.
Sure. Yeah. Things are moving swiftly over the weekend, especially on the Russian side. So you have Vladimir Putin and Russia moving at lightning speed, and John Kerry made this grand announcement before the weekend that we'll see what happens with this referendum in the Crimea, but they have until Monday, and we're going to announce something big. Well, Monday has come and Monday is gone, and nothing big has been announced. And a lot of the people in the city, in Wall Street, are tweeting that the sanctions, the so-called sanctions that the West were slapping on Russia, are as weak as they'd expect them to be, and they're all very, very happy about the lack of sanctions. So again, all bark, no bite, coming from the West, simply because, as you've outlined earlier, looking at that trade graph, United States has zero political and economic leverage in this situation. The only thing that they have in terms of leverage, and that goes for the EU as well, is subterfuge and sabotage. So, it's quite an incredible thing. And so, look, Russia's recognized the sovereignty of Crimea, and Crimea would join the Russian Federation. How this is being spun in the West, if you look at the headline this morning on the Washington Post, I mean, they talk about Soviet propaganda or Nazi propaganda. The job that the press is doing in the West is something that would dazzle any of the great propagandists of the 20th century. This is the headline of the Washington Post this morning. It says, Russia announces that Putin says he doesn't want more of the Ukraine than Crimea. So they've already framed this in terms of they're absorbing the Crimea as part of the Republic of Russia, when in fact I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's going to be part of a Russian Federation of States. So again, ignoring the referendum, ignoring the democracy, as Gorbachev pointed out. And Mikhail Gorbachev is an arch globalist. He's pointed out this morning that he applauds the Crimean people. He says this corrects a mistake that was made during the Soviet era. In other words, the Crimean people didn't get a choice to be absorbed into the Ukraine originally. So he said this is correcting an old mistake. This is Gorbachev, Nobel Peace Prize winner, ardent globalist, and friend of the West and every U.S. leader and European leader since the collapse of the Soviet Union. So that pretty much speaks volumes.
Right. Well, just to echo what you've said there, Malcolm Rifkin this morning really pretty disappointed that the language and the sanctions weren't a lot stronger. So he's saying all that the international community has done so far is implement visa sanctions and asset freezes on 22 or 23 individuals. That is a pathetic response. So the question is, what kind of response was he hoping for? Lob a few tridents over or something? What was he really expecting? William Hague then this morning William Hague had this to say. What did he say? The UK condemns in the strongest terms Russia's flagrant disregard of Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. For the UK and our allies, the Crimea remains part of Ukraine. We are witnessing a clear attempt to pave the way for the annexation of part of the sovereign territory of an independent nation, European state, through military force and an illegal and illegitimate referendum. I mean, again, more and more hypocrisy here, because at the end of the day, while Britain, for example, or Ireland or the Netherlands weren't annexed to Europe through military force, they were certainly annexed by stealth through illegal and illegitimate referenda, which were just held time after time until the right answer was gotten. The UK calls again on Russia to enter into dialogue with Ukraine and with the international community to resolve the crisis through diplomacy and in accordance with international law, not to exacerbate it further through unilateral and provocative actions. Continuing to ignore those calls will bring serious consequences for Russia. We will urgently consider our response to this latest escalation with our allies and partners, including at the European Council this week. Putin must be laughing. Patrick, surely?
Well, I watched the parliamentary address in Moscow this morning, and Vladimir Putin pretty much called out every bit of sabotage that the West has been engaged in. The Russians see right through it, as do most of the world community. The only people that don't see through it are the sort of people that are getting their news from Sky or The Sun or The Times or the Wall Street Journal. So it's a heavy exercise of propaganda in the Western media. So essentially in the West, the fourth estate has become a fifth column. In other words, the press are subverting the truth. They're subverting international law. They're working to sculpt public opinion so that they can look at the situation and listen to someone like William Hague and think, oh, that sounds absolutely reasonable. But what's the other thing that people don't talk about is in a few months, Brian, Mike, and Lou, in a few months, Scotland is meant to be given a referendum about breaking away from the UK, from part of Great Britain, but the United Kingdom. So if it's good enough for Scotland, why is it not good enough for the people of the Crimea? That's my question.
Well,
and a good one.
I think one of the things I'd throw back to you, Patrick, of course, if you look at the build-up for the breakaway of Scotland, everything has been neatly put into place. So massive sums of money have been given to Alex Salmond in order to put his case for Scotland leaving the Union. And of course, we had the subtle little trick of dropping the age of those who could participate to 16. So we've got people that haven't even got their personal lives and identities sorted out, and they're going to be able to vote on whether Scotland stays or goes. We know that in Scotland there's some very vicious politics now occurring where people who are saying that Scotland should stay with the Union are being threatened and intimidated. So for Britain, anybody from Britain, William Hague in this case, to stand up and crow about how our own electoral procedures go is rank hypocrisy. We could also point a finger to events back in Birmingham when we had a lady called Lynn Homer in charge, where the Electoral Commission describes the election process there as something out of a banana republic. And of course, in many other cities across UK, over a number of the more recent elections, we've seen gross electoral fraud. So it's just unbelievable arrogance and hypocrisy from these British politicians that they're now pointing a finger at Russia. And the bit that I'll come back to, sort of an ex-military person from Cold War era, to see these suits standing up and effectively making out they're going to threaten Russia when in fact all they can offer is American personnel and equipment. It makes me sick. I really find it difficult now to find suitable adjectives to describe these people.
No, they've really painted themselves into a corner on this. Basically, they thought they could flip the government, essentially backing a neo-Nazi leaning cabal that's trying to form an ethnic state, essentially in the Ukraine. So the sort of language coming out of this, members of the Svoboda Party and the sort of right sector is about ethnic cleansing. They want to kick out the Jews. And here we have President Obama. I sent you a photo. I don't know if you got this or not, but President Obama shaking hands with Yats. Yats is Victoria Nuland's puppet in the new Ukrainian government that took force at the barrel of a gun. And so this is a black president, the ultimate liberal rainbow president, shaking hands with a neo-Nazi, essentially. Imagine if the shoe is on the other foot. Imagine if that was in America or Britain or Germany. What sort of outrage, would the world be going through?
Patrick, there's an easy response to this one. I'm afraid we just didn't have time to get that photo uploaded. We'll try and show it another time. But if you talk about Obama, of course, what are you talking about? You're talking about Saul Alinsky. Subversive policy, and of course, as essentially a Marxist student, Alinsky said that anything justified the final result. You can lie, cheat, bully, adopt hypocrisy. It doesn't matter what you do in the political arena, as long as you achieve the ultimate goal. And of course, Obama was an absolute student of Saul Alinsky, particularly in the activist activities in the Chicago area.
Just quickly, I want to point out what's really interesting about Obama in this. He missed 2 key National Security Council meetings in the run-up to the weekend. Now, that's what was given to the press, that he missed them and that he was being briefed. The real story that I'm hearing out of Washington is that he was kept out of those meetings. In other words, there is a kind of a balkanization within the U.S. Government right now, a little power grab. The neoconservatives are essentially exerting their power. Victoria Nuland is appointed by Hillary Clinton. She is an arch neoconservative. She is married to one of the architects of the project of the New American Century. Married to Kagan, friends with Cheney, same gang. And so there is a little bit of a power struggle in Washington. Obama is being kept essentially in the corner on this one. And so now it's accelerated past such a point where it's become a crisis where everybody has basically got their hands dirty, including the president. So there's no way out at this point. And they have to move forward with the rhetoric and the sort of soft sanctions to show that they're getting some sort of an outcome out of this. But the end result, Brian, is, and we all know, that all this is just good for the arms race. To restart the arms race, to find a new enemy for the next decade in order to justify the types of military spending in America, in Britain, and elsewhere, the people who do profit off of this war footing and this war industry and the war psychology that we're constantly being bombarded with.
Well, Patrick, absolutely spot on there. And I think the very worrying thing is that a lot of people, I think they're sat in their armchairs in UK and they think that the extreme violence only happens overseas. It only happens in Iraq or Afghanistan or Libya or Syria. But of course, it wasn't many years ago before we had quite severe violence on the streets in Northern Ireland, and we now have British politicians working with others to take us closer and closer to real violence on the ground in Europe. And we'll say these are British politicians who've done their best to absolutely devastate the British Armed Forces over the last 10 years in particular. So we've got this bellicose rhetoric from Cameron and the likes of William Hague and the rest of the Lib conservative cabal. And what are they doing? They're pushing and pushing closer and closer to violence and warfare or civil war within the Ukraine. We're bringing the violence right into the heart of Europe. And
they failed at Syria, didn't they? So now they've got the push.
So now we're bringing it into Europe, absolutely. I've heard rumours that British politicians, British MPs, are simply refusing to comment to some overseas news outlets with regard to Ukraine. Are you able to comment on that or tell us anything you might have heard?
Yeah, I mean, I've been scanning the media, especially the foreign media and the global news channels in London, like RT, for instance, and I see an absolute absence in the last sort of 10 days or 7 days of any British MPs coming on to comment. Before March, we'd see a regular sort of appearances from various different voices, and if I'm not too speculating here, I'd say that someone's cracked the whip, saying that you're not going to be talking to foreign media, because I haven't seen anybody in the crisis point, which is right now. This is when you'd like to hear the opinions of members of parliament, especially on a global news network that has a reach of 80 million per day. You'd expect to hear something. So I don't know what's going on, but certainly it's something to speculate on, but it's happening.
Right.
Okay.
And one last
we'll
thing,
move
Brian.
on then.
I think Patrick wants just to add something. Yeah, Patrick,
can I just add? Let me just underline one thing. You know, I'm wondering. I'm just asking the question. What was David Cameron doing in the 1980s when we were still involved in the Cold War? And is William Hague, Cameron, do they study their history at all? Do they realize the sensitivity of the Russia's sensitivity to its national security interests? Do you know how many people the Soviet Union lost in fighting the Germans and fighting Nazi groups in the Second World War? They lost approximately 20 million. 20 million people died. And compare that to Britain, 400,000, and similar numbers with the United States. So, you know, from a Russian standpoint of view, for us to be over there flip-flopping and tipping governments and putting fascists into power, and then condemning Russia for securing its vital interests in their own backyard, to me is astonishing. And I think you should go back and just revisit your history a little bit, and know also that the Allied forces, you know, we have a shared history with Russia, and you can't erase that. And quite frankly, we could not have won the Second World War if not the fact that we were fighting alongside Russia. So, you know, these are important things, and they're important pieces of shared history. And I think to throw that out the window or bury it in the basement right now is a grave mistake.
Right.
Good point, Patrick. Thank you. Mike, I think we're sticking with you, and I think you've got more on Ukraine.
So the UK now is escalating things from a military point of view because they're sending out typhoons. I believe it's 6 typhoons to the region in order to, quote, guard the Baltic states. Following the script, Obama has decided that the best course of action is to run around Europe in order to organise, I don't know whether he's going to be organising arms sales or what, but before he does that, he's sending his little helper, Joe Biden, to prepare the ground for him. So Biden arrived in Poland today, and he'll also visit Estonia, Lithuania and Latvia over the next 24 hours or so. Just finally, on the Ukraine, because this absolutely echoes Patrick's comments here, is yet another article, and this is quite a good one actually. The Nazis even Hitler was afraid of, and this is really giving a bit of a historical context to the type of people that the West are supporting in the Ukraine. We've mentioned this fact quite a number of times now over the last couple of weeks, but this is probably the strongest language that I've seen in what's a relatively mainstream outlet. And the guy who's written this is a guy called George Ellison, and he's a writer, a Ukrainian-based writer. So you know, he knows who he's talking about. And there at the bottom we've got a photograph of Kerry shaking hands. Sorry, remind me this guy's name, Patrick.
I can't pronounce it properly, but I call him what Victoria Nuland calls him, which is yachts. Right. So this is he's shaking hands with yachts.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So that's that.
Right. Well, Patrick, you kindly invited me on your show on Sunday, and we got talking about the role of the BBC in events around the world, but we were focusing in on Ukraine. We thought today it would be important to come back onto this because the BBC is certainly up to some very dirty tricks. But let's have a look at this one from the Express, because this is the sort of dross which is being given to the British public at the moment, so that we have a whole story apparently about the BBC being accused of left-wing bias for employing an ex-Labour advisor as an economics reporter. This man's apparently got a lot of economics experience, but he hasn't done any reporting, but he tends to be Labour left-wing. And this is pushed across as if it's a significant story for the home audience. But what we wanted to do is take our viewers and listeners into different territory. We've been into some of it before, but now we can have a look at it against the background of the Ukraine. And this is the organisation that we want to highlight. It's a charity. Well, it says it's a charity. It's the BBC's charity. Media Action, transforming lives through media around the world. And they boast that they're the BBC's international development charity, legally, financially and operationally independent from the BBC. Well, that's not what we think. And, well, we should take comfort because they build on the fundamental values of the BBC to guide its work. Well, let's remind ourselves of BBC values: bias reporting, and I'm going to say the EU, we'll come on to that, fraud and corruption, protecting paedophiles, abuse of women, foul language, sex and violence, sexualisation of children, aggressive collection of licence fees, excessive and greedy salaries, and above all, arrogance.
And promoting children's homes and demonising families.
Demonising families, we could go on, but it's been across the press and media, so we don't need to make this up. We know that these things have been reported on by a great many people. So we've got a charity. It's embedded in the BBC. It uses BBC offices, about £600,000 a year worth, which of course is all provided by the licence payer. And well, here they are, transforming lives and media around the world. Well, in fact, it gets better than that, because one of the areas that this organisation has been operating in is the Ukraine, and they've been doing this through a project with the European Union. The BBC Media Action has been leading a media neighbourhood project for the European Union. This is about €4 million worth. And they're going to be providing different training courses for journalists from Ukraine. Now, this project is centred on many different countries, but what we're highlighting here is that we've got a rather smoky little BBC charity heavily involved in one of the most serious areas in Europe at the moment. So if we just have a look at some of the detail of this, Media Action has been given the lead of an EU political project. They're running the project through Media Neighbourhood. That's the wider title. They're looking to train about 1,200 journalists, and they're running a 3-year programme which is going to be media capacity building in the EPNI, the European Neighbourhood and Partnership Instrument. We're doing a little bit more research on that because we don't know exactly what that means, but we can tell you they're going to be training journalists and running a BBC networking programme across 17 EU neighbouring countries. And BBC Media Action, remember this is a so-called independent charity, will be leading a consortium consisting of IREX Europe, Fondation AFP, the General Press Group, and Canal France, French Television Group, etc., etc. And the overall aim of this is to present pro-European news. What do you make of that, Patrick? Have we lost it? Sorry, you're there.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The European Neighbourhood and Partnership Instrument, that is quite a frightening little acronym there. And the definition of that is all in the words. It's an instrument. An instrument used to engineer. An instrument used to poke and to do surgery. So that's exactly what they are referring to there. So who is making up these terms and who's doing these things? Not the sort of license fee payer, but the BBC was just had to apologize yesterday for telling a huge lie in their Panorama documentary in North Korea, claiming that the North Korean students were being used as a human shield by the dear leader. So I find that ironic that they're going to expose the ultimate propaganda state, North Korea, and they themselves having to contort and twist reality to such a degree. It's incredible.
I couldn't agree more, and let's follow it through, because of course we've shown this before, but it's now got greater relevance that we know that BBC Media Action has been active in Ukraine. Because if we look at this independent charities funding, it's been getting money from the UK government Department for International Development. It's been getting millions from the European Union. It's been getting millions from the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the US State Department, the United Nations, the Dutch government, and others. So this is definitely not a charity. This is a governmental instrument, as you say. We can just blow that up a bit. Check this yourself by going to the website. Don't believe us. But we went a step further. So basically, we sent an email to BBC Media Action. This is back on the 27th of February. And we said that BBC Media Action states that the other main approach the Trust uses is media development, which seeks to promote and develop independent, reliable and democratic media through relevant training and programming, media consultation and reconstruction using BBC's expertise and resources. And we said the key word is independent. If BBC Media Action is promoting media, independent media, how can it also be fronting the multi-million EU-funded Media Neighbourhood project? So we sent that in February, the end of February. We've had no reply. We've chased it this morning, but got no reply before coming live today. But we did something else, because we also emailed the Media Neighbourhood, and they came back and said, well, we're providing training opportunities for journalists across 17 countries. And then they gave us something we'd asked for. The Media Neighbourhood's team salaries are indeed paid by BBC Media Action. So basically, here we've got a political BBC charity working directly to promote an EU political agenda. And it's just all in your face, really. So here's the outputs for Media Neighbourhood: creation of an active and sustainable professional journalism network, increased awareness and understanding in that ENPI region, improved capacity, enhanced capacity for media, and this is political. So let's put it into context. Here's Juliet Harkin, one of the key experts. Now, I'm using Syria as an example of what Media Action does, and here she's saying, with individuals within the ministry who wanted change and tried to be the drivers of that, all media development work that's been done in Syria has, in my opinion, been predicated upon this idea that there can be change from within. You have an authoritarian regime and you find who the reformers are within that and you work with them. So this woman is effectively promoting change from the inside. And if you just come back to that briefly, Mike, we just say, what happens if we replace Syria with Ukraine? Is this what we're actually doing? Mm-hmm. And, well, the money's all there. This is, you can find this yourself. Here's the free office space. Just pretty incredible. So BBC working extremely hard to help promote events in the Ukraine, I think.
Mm. Yeah, BBC is the cash cow of European media organizations, and of course, what gives them the economic clout to grow in the way they do, to have the platforms they do, is that you have extortionate license fees that people are kind of coerced into paying, and that creates the base for the BBC Operation Launchpad. But you only have to look back at Syria. And, you look at one particular Panorama report about the school being napalmed. There was quite a lot of people online who had analyzed this to say that it was completely staged. And, of course, we've moved on from Syria, of course. So we're waiting for the next Panorama documentary to look at. And this North Korea incident is the kind of total violation of Ofcom regulations, the type that get other channels like Press TV, for instance, pulled off the air, with their license taken away. So where is the reciprocity here? Where's the justice? Where's who is governing the BBC? It seems to me like they're governing themselves.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And Mike, you're taking us further into what's been happening with Leveson, really.
Actually, I think you're probably got to see this as a failure of the whole Leveson agenda, really, because it's more desperation from the Media Standards Trust's Hacked Off campaign. Their campaign, obviously, for control of the press, and it just looks like it continues to fail because they're taking more and more desperate action. Really having to dredge the bottom of the barrel here. John Cleese, Sir David Attenborough, J.K. Rowling, Victoria Wood, Richard Branson, Peter Capaldi, Michael Palin, Stephen Fry, Rory Bremner, Miranda Hart, Richard Dawkins, Salman Rushdie, Danny Boyle, David Hare, Tom Stoppard. And Rowan, let's not forget Rowan Williams. The 200 performers, writers and academics calling on the newspapers to agree the Royal Charter. I mean, that's clearly not going to happen. The newspapers very quickly understood, hopefully with maybe perhaps a bit of help from us, understood what they were up against and have taken appropriate action. They're not going to run with the Royal Charter. They're going to do it on their own. Clearly, the Media Standards Trust and the Hacked Off campaign desperately trying to keep this in the forefront of the news agenda and really generally failing.
Yeah. So it's not only controlling our media, is it, Mike, but we've also got some activity to arrest people that we don't like very much.
Right. Well, this is really for Patrick, but quite an interesting story in Press TV. Basically, the police have arrested the head of a Press TV affiliated company based in London. This company providing media for Press TV. And this is following a complaint issued by an Iranian separatist, Shadi Sadr. Press TV seems to be alleging that Sadr may be working or have worked for the for MI6 and she's working in Iran to cause what they're calling the resource-rich southwestern province of Khuzestan to break away from the rest of the country. They published an article criticising Sadr and the things that she was saying, and she made a complaint. And he was and this head of the British arm of Press TV, who had absolutely nothing to do with the article and the criticism of her, was arrested. So, Pat, what do you think's going on here?
Well, clearly, the comments mentioned about the northwestern province that you just discussed being potentially a breakaway or the location of a color revolution is something that seems to be sensitive. So perhaps that's on the regime change or breakaway color revolution agenda in the coming year or so. So maybe it was, I don't know exactly. But why would you take the the head of the production company? Why not question the persons who made the comments is a big question. But again, this is they've been leaning on Press TV for a long time. They've managed to take their Ofcom license away on very spurious and murky charges, taking them basically off the airwaves. So the problem with foreign media in the global sense is that if something's going on in Iran, then people in Britain can see what another point of view is, or in Russia or the Ukraine with foreign media. And if you're trying to sell a certain political agenda to back whatever your foreign policies are in this country or Europe, that's a problem, because you have a huge number of people that are tuning into these channels because, quite frankly, what people are telling me is they're getting more of the truth from the foreign media. And you can't deny that. You can't spin that. That's a fact. You talk to people on the street, in the pub, they're saying, yeah, I watch RT or I watch Press TV, and it's giving me a totally different perspective. Their documentaries have more depth. They take a different point of view. This is what people living in the 21st century crave the most. But just quickly, I want to comment on the Royal Charter situation. This is an announcement this morning from the World Association of Newspapers and News Producers. Basically, they have charged that the Royal Charter is no solution at all and totally reject it. That is the global media and press membership organization. They've said that the Royal Charter does not form any type of a solution at all, and they reject it. So that is the global press organization talking about the Royal Charter. So, and who are these? Why do we have to tote out celebrities to sell what is clearly a heavily politicized move by government to take control of the press? What credibility do actors and performers have in all this? And don't tell me it's because of the phone hacking.
They're the stars. They're the stars. It's a desperation. Time's moving on a little bit, Patrick, so we need to get Louise in here. She's got, we're following it on with the clampdown in of the British state, really.
Indeed we are. So it appears that Cambridgeshire Police are targeting and threatening political activists. A story in today's Guardian says that a special covert unit within Cambridgeshire Police have been targeting activists to become informers and spy on groups such as environmentalists. First thing that comes to mind for me is frackers, the fracking. And according to this article, police from the covert unit would follow activists, try to hand them envelopes in supermarkets and turn up at their home. And the unit also scared activists who refused to join them by telling them they would be prosecuted if they spoke out about being approached. So I had a little look into Cambridgeshire Police, and I found... Yeah, you can go on to the next one. Yeah, so we already actually know about what goes on over in Cambridge as we got this article here back from December of 2012, where the SAS started going down to Cambridge to recruit people at the university. They are already recruiting MI5 and MI6 agents. So the chief...
So I just say some of whom have ended up on the wrong side, of course, if we go back to Philby and Blunt to McLean.
Yeah, okay, so let's move on to the head of police down in Cambridge. Well, their chief constable is a gentleman called Simon Parr. Mr. Parr is also the ACPO lead for emergency procedures, which means he works closely with the Home and Cabinet Office. And he's also a director of the National Police ICT Company and the co-chairman of Microsoft Worldwide Public Safety and Justice Advisory Council, which we're going to have a look into in a minute. And this interested in Mike and Brian because he's also a member of the Windsorship Leadership Trust, which was set up by Prince Philip and is based at St George's House at Windsor Castle. And I do believe the UK column has written extensive articles about this Windsor.
We're going to recommend these articles to people if you go on the website.
And I'm just going to quote a few little pieces of this article. And it's the home of the Windsor Leadership Trust, St George's House. Leaders from all sectors take part, including business, government, military, religion and not-for-profit. St George's House was founded in 1966 by the Duke of Edinburgh and the Dean of Windsor. And the website of the World Bank containing a page dedicated to leadership programmes, Windsor meetings. All meetings at Windsor Leadership Trust are held under the Chatham House rule, which the majority of our viewers will associate with Common Purpose's Julia Middleton's book and connections between the monarchy, Common Purpose and the UN. And back in the 2012 annual lecture, which was held at Windsor, it was chaired by Cressida Dix. And one more little point from this article, the Windsor Leadership Trust supports the CLAW Leadership Programme, and CLAW Leadership Programme is supported by Common Purpose. The relationship between these organisations is incestuous in nature. Yeah. So very, very interesting stuff there. Where are we going now with it, Brian?
Tangled web.
It is the Tangled web. And here's the Microsoft and how he's involved. This was the
extraordinary.
It is extraordinary that the head of police is also one of the directors of Microsoft in public and safety and national security. So it's very interesting with all the things that have been coming out about Snowden, the leaks and everything else.
And all of this is to do with very big corporations spying on individuals.
Exactly.
And it's being sold by, to be safe, we need to spy on you.
Yes. So I just went and had a little look at who the MP was in Cambridgeshire, and here he is. Julian Huppert, and apparently he is saying he's very concerned about what is going on with this covert unit and wants a full report from Mr. Simon Parr. So watch this space. We will keep you updated. But people up at the fracking sites, just be on your guard, because if they're doing it in Cambridge, they could well be doing it in Manchester as well.
Indeed. Well, chop subjects a little bit here, but working parents.
Yes. Okay, so this is clearly going to hit out on parents who want to raise their children themselves rather than having the government bring their children up. And according to this Mail article, parents who both work will receive childcare tax breaks of up to £2,000 for each child under 12. Cameron and Clegg will announce that the government will pay 20% of costs for nannies, nurseries, after-school clubs and childminders up to the value of £10,000 and with no limit on the number of children that can be claimed for either. And this scheme was thought up by Tory Education Minister Liz Truss, who we have done some work on in the past. Tax-free childcare accounts are going to be set up by Revenue and Customs and National Savings, and families are going to be able to pay money into these accounts, with the government adding 20p for every 80p credited. So this to me is a clear attack on families who don't want their kids being influenced by the state, and we already know that Labour want to have our children in school from the age of 2 and the school day extended until 6. So to me, this is just more pressure on the mums and dads who want to stay at home and bring up their children their way.
Every Child Matters is the brainwashing programme.
Yeah.
And a holiday in Venice is not going to do us much good, is it, Mike?
Yeah, well, we might as well forget Crimea and Scotland, because there is another referendum in Europe, and this time it's Venice. Now, we have to remember a little of Venice's history, because up until its decline following the 14th century Lombard banking crisis, it was Venice that was the centre of the global financial empire. And in those days, the Mongols, Saracens and the Turks were the bully boys used to keep the world in check, used by Venice. The City of London, of course, is the modern Venice, and as we spoke about yesterday, the US is a global bully boy. But anyway, Venice still remembers its empire, and they want it back, so they're voting to secede. So just like Scotland, Pat, it'd be interesting to see whether they actually make any progress on this.
See there? We might have lost it.
Sorry, my fault again.
Yeah.
So if Venice secedes, Mike, would that mean they would be part of the Eurozone, or would they be out of the Eurozone?
I think the same applies as for Scotland. It's totally up in the air, but I don't think they particularly want to be, is the key point.
Well, they would have a distinct economic advantage being out of the Eurozone, the same type of advantage that Switzerland has and other countries like Norway, for instance. So that would be very, very interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah.
Maybe William Hague will be threatening them with military action, something like that. He's going to send a typhoon. Oh no, there aren't any typhoons left, because they're all in Poland at the moment, I think.
No, we're going to have to send fishing trawlers down to Venice.
Yeah, and plenty of them in Brixham.
And all 6 of our naval fleet boats to sort things out down there.
Well, the Navy's a bit embarrassed at the moment, Pat, because they've been firing torpedoes at jetties in Devonport, but I promised I wouldn't talk about that. But I just have, I think. Okay, well, it's a big day tomorrow.
Yeah, it's our big day, and it's also the government's big day. So the Mirror have some budget predictions for tomorrow, and they think with elections planned for next year that this budget will be a steady one. But I will just point out some of the things they're suggesting people look out for. The right side of the Tories are pushing for Mr Osborne to raise the threshold for the 40p rate of tax to help the struggling middle class. Lib Dems want to see further threshold from low-income workers raised still further from 10,000 to 10,500, and Labour are saying it would cut taxes for 24 million people with a lower 10p starting rate of income tax. And Osborne is also facing calls to cut tuition fees for science, maths and engineering courses, and also to give grants to small firms that hire apprentices. And he is expected to confirm that working couples will get a tax break worth £1,200 towards the cost of their childcare, and Lib Dems said they would go further and are looking to extend the free childcare, which we've just covered. And we're looking as regards to home building. Ebbsfleet in Kent is now going to be the site of Agenda 21 kind of city, isn't it? New Garden City. And in addition, he wants to extend the Help to Buy scheme, which sees the Treasury underwrite the cost of mortgages until 2020. With regards to energy, Osborne is under pressure to do more to help people with rising energy bills, and backbenchers are pushing for firms to stop charging customers on prepaid meters more than those who pay by direct debit. Yeah, we'll see. And finally, with regards to business, they are reckoning he's going to even cut the corporation tax even more, so the big corporations are going to get off again.
Of course. Mike, what's your comments?
What about the budget?
Well, the budget, all banks, it's all tied in, isn't it? It's one big scam.
Yeah, I mean, the budget, I don't know how much of that he's going to do, but I don't think it really matters. It's not going to improve anything. But in terms of the financial system, well, quite an interesting article here in the Telegraph. More confirmation, that bail-in is the new policy. So when the financial system crashes again, as it is going to do in the not-too-distant future, none of us can say we weren't warned. This is Harry Wilson, the Telegraph's banking editor, and he was commenting on Sir John Cunliffe's comments. He's Deputy Governor of the Bank of England and responsible for the stability of Britain's financial system. And he said that in the 6 years following the crash, he's still concerned that the authorities have no way to successfully wind up a struggling major institution in the event of a new crisis. Now, this is one of the key areas where Glass-Steagall would help. And as I've been banging on about for, 5-6 years, I've been wondering in all that time why it is that banks seem to be the only organisations which don't simply end up being placed in administration when they effectively become insolvent, and instead we bail them out in the past. But in fact, that isn't going to happen anymore. We've made a lot of progress on too big to fail, Sir John Cunliffe said, but we're not there yet. I don't think we can say with confidence now that we could resolve a failing global giant. And guess where he was speaking? Well, Chatham House, of course. And one of the main changes since the crisis has been to increase the ability to force losses on bank creditors, in particular bondholders. And so he's basically talking about the bail-in policy now right at the centre of the Bank of England's policy in the UK in order to deal with a failing, too big to fail bank. And I don't believe, we've been saying this for quite some time, bondholders, it won't stop with bondholders. It will affect savers as it did in Greece. They have placed, they claim that there's insurance in place to protect a certain amount of savings. And so for perhaps a significant proportion of the population, savings would be protected, at least initially. Nonetheless, people with larger pots of money in the bank risk losing it.
Can I add something, Mike?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk with regards to this Russia standoff in the Western media and also in the political classes about the Russian oligarchs, the 140 Russian oligarchs. Now, what kind of oligarchs do we have in the city of London or in Wall Street? This is a whole different class of oligarchs, and quite frankly,
these are Venetian oligarchs, Pat.
These are oligarchs that will literally put a gun to the head of government, saying that if we don't get our money, yes, we screwed up. We put liabilities on our books and counted them as assets. If you don't give us 800 billion, 200 billion, we're going to basically collapse society. That's what was done in 2008 in the United States with Henry Paulson. So what kind of oligarchs do we have? I want to see that conversation to be had a little bit in a more kind of sober fashion, because it all seems to be talking about the Russian oligarchs. No one talking about our banking oligarchs that are basically holding our economies, our societies to ransom for their mistakes and their losses.
Yeah. Agree with that. Well, what's the solution? We're going to come back to the Bradbury pound, I think.
Are you doing this, Lou, or am I?
Well, we can both do it. You go first and I'll follow.
Well, look, tomorrow is budget day, as we've just said, and as we've mentioned for a couple of weeks now, we're meeting tomorrow to start the process of trying to educate the media, any politicians that have the guts to come and speak to us, and anybody else that's interested about the Bradbury pound. We're asking everybody to come and join us in that. And if you do get the chance to pop down to your local charity shop and buy a what do you call it?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking
Case.
A lunchbox.
The case.
about.
A lunchbox.
Lunchbox. That's a good
Painted
idea.
red and put a Bradbury bee on it. Then that would be fantastic. But we're arriving there at 11:30 or so tomorrow. Details on the UK Column website, and hope to see you there.
Yeah.
I see that photograph, Mike, and the caption should be "Mummy, Mummy, look what I've drawn today in school."
And just a reminder, I'm going to pipe in now. It is going to be 11:30 tomorrow. We have been updating the Facebook page, and we put pictures up actually of some balloons that have been very kindly made for us, and some leaflets to hand out. And as I say, it's going to be around 11:30. We are going to be meeting at College Green in Westminster tomorrow morning. So early start for us.
It will
Early
be,
to
but
bed
it'll be
tonight.
a good day.
It will be a good day.
And we'll leave everybody on the note of Robert Greene, who remains in prison in Perth, in Scotland, having not had any proper trial. He's still on remand. Robert, who has stood up to defend children and protect children from abuse, remains in prison. Meanwhile, the Scottish system released wife-beater member of the Scottish Parliament, Bill Walker, early. So clearly Scotland knows its priorities. And we've also learnt that this is Mr. Mowat, who's Robert's constituency MP. Apparently, he has not been able to do anything. We phoned his local office today, and we got a very, very aggressive response from the lady who said she would not talk to us. So we don't know why Mr. Mowat should be so concerned. We've spoken to his London office and we're waiting for a response. But presumably, as with the situation in Ukraine, our MPs have been told do not talk about the abuse of Holly Gregg. We wonder why. Embarrassment in the Scottish establishment, I would think. So, final closing 2 seconds from you, Pat.
Yes, I just wanted to just to reiterate the fact that the reaction to the move by the Crimean people, the referendum by the government so far in the West has been very lackluster. So that leads me to think that this is now taking another turn. So I don't know how many moves they have left, because it seems like Russia is dictating the pace of this story right now. So it'll be very interesting to look at in the next week.
Yeah, certainly. And if people in UK stand up to be counted, we can put a stop to all of this nonsense. But we'll concentrate on the Bradbury pound tomorrow and see if we can take a bit of the power away from the bankers.
Yeah, so we won't be here tomorrow. We'll be returning on Thursday. But tonight it is the Health Revolution with Clive de Carle, and that will be live from 9 o'clock. So we'll hopefully see many of you up at Westminster tomorrow. If we don't, well, then we will be back here, as I say, with the news at 1 o'clock on Thursday.
We'll be back asking why and where you were. So if you can, join us in London, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.